If you look at the U.S., Don Pedro Albizu Campo was killed and tortured, cruel and unusual punishment for simply standing up for Puerto Rican rights, the right to sovereign control, a right to sovereignty, and in regards to the supremacy clause and the territorial clause. So he was adamant about race wars in the U.S. and during his time, racial climax or tensions were really high. In fact, they're high to this day. I mean, since Donald Trump has been in office, they see Donald Trump as a provocateur in regards to race war. Um, there was a lot of racism, in fact, in the U.S. Army, and Pedro Aviso Campo fought against racism in the Army. And this is another reason why I want to be an elk, because of Puerto Rican history and in wars and having so many veterans in the island of Puerto Rico not having the right to vote. Um, and also, I just need to make Phi Iota Alpha also inclusive to the Elks. So when they graduate as alumni, they will be able to work with the veterans, and many of them actually, Phi Iota Alpha actually work with a lot of American veterans, giving back to their community. So being from the Elks will be also a great step forward for Phi Iota Alpha. The other thing I wanted to discuss was that the trajectory of how democracy will look like in the U.S. with Muslim soldiers, uh, and also with the presidential. Obviously, the presidential will be like Puerto Rico, where the vice president has to have his apron, and the pharaoh. Pharaoh, remember, masonry and pharaoh are two separate things, but they are distinct alike because they come from Egypt and the history of the faith. The president has to be a pharaoh, meaning it has to be, by law, in the Constitution being rectified, has to be a Protestant Catholic. Because we want America to be Christian part of Europe in that assembly because of that history of Britain, George Washington Protestant, Catholic, and so forth. He was both, actually, because he didn't want to get caught up in that civil war. Remember, the 30-Year War never ended. France ended up going so radical to the other side that it's because it wanted to avoid that 30-Year War, because you can't just kill believers and think that that's going to be it. No, every time you fight believers, you have wars reciprocate up after wars right after that. And that's how it is. The British invaded the Middle East, and ever since that, the British have always had problems with the Muslims because of it. Because they got involved into a civil war and then led a crusade in the Middle East, taking up territory after all the wars that the Muslims had. Even though, again, Christianity is Islam. Another thing is, yes, so the parliament, or the Senate, however you want to modernize it, it has to be classless, egalitarianism. So the Senate itself has to be a diversity of Muslims, Christians, and Jews, because if the U.S. is pulled into a judgment at the presidency level, it's Christendom. At the vice president level, it's Christendom. But it's more of the masonry. But you can be Islamic and be a pharaoh, and also, but at the presidency level, you have to rule as a Christian. So you could be a Muslim, know the Quran, as Thomas Jefferson did, but rule as a Christian through the laws of canon law, um, and so forth, and also, of course, Christian finance, because we want the IMF to be Christianized, nationalized, and Christianized. Um, and it's important because then all that 60% of military taxation will go to religious purposes like building mosques, restructuring churches. Like Puerto Rico has beautiful churches that need to be restructured. 60% of the military is going to that. There have been catastrophes in Texas and so forth that they need to reinvest in faith and invest in Templar institutions, the teachings and educational parts and books and literature, philosophy, and all of that direction. So, how that structure will be. Of course, 2 years on presidency, so it'd be very democratic. 2 years, and then 2 years, and that's it. You're gone. Not more than that. Because, of course, people get authoritative, and people just politics has mood swings. Some one time people are favoritism to you, and next minute they hate you, and next minute they love you. So it's back and forth. So it's good to just have a rotation like that. Just 2 years and 2 years, and that's 4 years in total. 2 years you get reelected. And I believe that when I was researching that about democracy and so forth, it was really actually 2 years where I came from with that notion. Also, that native indigenous have to be by law in that Senate, but they have to be of the faith. They have to be of the faith. You know, we don't want to take the law away from them in regards to shamanism. As long as they're monotheism and shamanism, they are of the law. What about other monotheism? Yeah, I mean, it's part of the Medina Constitution, so they will be allowed to be part of the Senate. But by law, any candidate that's running has to tell people their faith. And again, the only person that could be at the executive branch or the judicial have to be of Masonry. What about females as judges? I am against female judges because I stick to the laws of the Torah, Bible, and the Quran. But if they want to be more of secularism, then they can have the Masonry females and or the women elks in those positions of that judge of those judgments. I keep it to scriptural. I mean, a lot of women feminists will prefer women there as those judges because they need their rights. But if you're of the law, there are men that are abusive of the laws, and that's I'll leave it as a question mark there, philosophically or political theology wise or faith theological faith wise. That's up to them. If to me, it'd be better if the U.S. is just one party because of the constant filibustering, and it's really focused on every country is really focused on really economic models. So I would change that they would need PhDs in the Senate to get more brilliance in there at that level. Also, chastity for the Supreme Court justices, meaning that they cannot have, while they are active, they cannot be with a partner. So if they're of the faith, they cannot be with a partner. They cannot have sexual relations with a partner, be influenced in any other way to a gender. So there's gender neutrality in a sense. Yeah, I explained all those fundamental thoughts about how to make America greater again. And of course, in judgment, if the U.S. were to have a war, it's Christian leadership, and then the Europeans would be Christianized little by little. Of course, there's a lot of opposition now to that doctrine, especially in France. But the French really have a treaty with the native indigenous, and if you put them in the Senate, know that that'd be actually good in regards to their alliance with the French and the U.S. alliance. That way that they're inclusive, not left the way they are now. If they have a war with Latin America, then Latin America is shifting to a parliamentary that is Islamic, and that they will be Islamic at the executive levels, and the unification of that would mean that they will be in an Islamic banking, and of course the U.S. will be in a Christian one. That is the way we structural readjustments. And also that means that they will be in a treaty again, like they were with Morocco, with the King of Morocco. They will have peace. That means that they will have a peace treaty with the Middle East, and they don't have to be dealing with invasions or political theological ramifications from theirs. There's a retaliation strike or something, then their courts will handle theirs. That's how Islam works anyhow. That's how the faith works anyhow. A Christian is ruled by their province. Islamic is ruled by their province, etc. Even though sometimes the kings of Ethiopia used to protect and give amnesty, refuge, asylum refuge to Muslims, and unlike Muslims today, don't give any refuge to Muslims in their countries. Christians did, and so that would be a political theological question to say, well, if the Christians used to do it, why can't we do it? And many Puritans were actually looking for refuge, and they did find refuge in a country that was Indian land. And so again, I leave that as a posed question. What do you guys think about Muslim refuge in Christianity if a Muslim does transgression of the laws? To me, if a Muslim does transgression of the law, he should be held in court with Muslims, and that during that time it was polytheists. So just brought that up there. Take care. God bless.